So can I talk about the numbers? Because the numbers you heard don't add up. When you discover that the State Department thinks that our growth rate is less than 10% over a long period, and as you rightly pointed out, that's a 0.5% growth. Think about now the Albanian people in Kosovo and Macedonia. These have the highest birth rate in Europe today. Now, think about the fact that there is no visa liberalization. So there's no way for the youngest population in Europe to go west. They're forced to go to Turkey. But why not where there's some growth, like in Germany? That has to be resolved, number one. And think about the fact that you have this continuing adversarial relationship between the Serbs and the Albanians, at least at the government level. You heard from the State Department that they said that they see hope in integration, normalization. How can there be normalization when every opportunity Serbia gets, it says, we will never recognize the independence of Kosovo? How can you have European integration when 5 countries today out of the 28 are not recognizing the independence of Kosovo? And don't forget who the Albanian people are. They're the most pro-American, most pro-democracy, and the most tolerant people in terms of interreligious tolerance in Europe and perhaps the world today. They share 4 religions. There's even synagogues. The recent one was built in Albania. So you have Orthodox Christians, Roman Catholics, Muslims, and Jews. They intermarry. This is not a reality for the rest of Europe. This is what we should be supporting. These are the people that are the people on 9/11 from Kosovo and Macedonia were crying, walking with candles in the street, while the Serbs, the Greeks, Montenegrins, and Macedonians, ethnic Slavic Macedonians and whatnot, were dancing in the street. I just want to remind you, Mr. Chairman, who our friends are in the Balkans. You're continuing in a great path of great champion. We started the first hearing with Dante Fasel, a Democrat, then Gilman, then Hayek, then Lantos, and now you. And thank God we have this progression and that America understands that their best friends in the Balkans are the Albanian people. Now, why is this hearing so important? We want to see Southeast Europe integrated into Europe. But the answers you heard, and your questions were excellent, we got very few answers, tell us that unless the United States remains not only present, but active in Southeast Europe, there will be no European integration. There will be something that will happen before that that could create violence again. And I hope not. Nobody wants to see that. The problem is, the Albanian people can only take so much. So let's focus on Kosovo, and then a few comments on Montenegro. We had a Pristina-Belgrade agreement 2 years ago, heralded by Catherine Ashton. It's now been almost 2 years. Very little of the 15-point agreement has been implemented, and yet you heard the State Department say that it's mostly done. It is not. In fact, Serbia has yet to dismantle the parallel structures in the north. Now, what is, I understand your philosophy, and I love it, about self-determination, but there's a big difference in the self-determination that the Kosovars wanted and the Serbs want. Kosovars were under a genocidal maniac called Milosevic. And a lot of that is continuing today, this racism by the Slavic Macedonians and Slavic Serbs. There's actual racism against the Albanian people today. As you know, they're not Slavs. They should have never been put in a state called Yugoslavia. That was the biggest mistake that was made after World War I. So where are we going with this at this point? If the State Department thinks that things are in regular order, when Serbia is refusing to recognize Kosovo, refusing to take away the parallel structures and whatnot. The other problem the State Department has is that it has been much too involved in decisions that have been made within Kosovo. For instance, there was an election, there was an impasse, people did not want a return of the regime of Hassan Taci. Many people feel he is corrupt. And we can say the same thing about some politicians in Macedonia. But what happened was, our State Department...
I should say that about some politicians here. So.
Well, I hope not, but it's probably... But the problem is that we have a State Department now that forced the issue. There was a coalition, an opposition, that was trying to regularize things in Kosovo, and now we have a return of the political elite just switching chairs. Now Mr. Taci is the deputy to Isa Mustafa, who was rated yesterday with the population of Kosovo at 24% popularity, but our State Department engineered that back. Another thing.
Joe, you got 60 seconds.
Okay. All right. And let's look at Mr. Tell. He forces the creation of a road that's supposed to cost $1 billion to connect Albania and Kosovo. It goes to $2 billion. We need jobs in Kosovo, not a road. That road could have been built by local contractors for half price. And where does he end up? A senior position in Bechtel, the company he needed to get the job. I would say, Mr. Chairman, that we need the U.S. Inspector General for the for the State Department to look at that. Let me just conclude with Macedonia. And by the way, I want to be sure that all my written comments are on the record. And in the case of Kosovo, there's an article that was written by our Open Affairs advisor, confronting the roots, that's Shirley Gloy's DioGuardi, confronting the roots of Kosovo's downward spiral. And I would like to make sure that this article is put on the record in full.
We submitted and put into the record without objection.
And on Macedonia, we have another article by Erwin Foray. He was someone who was the former EU Special Representative in Macedonia from 2005 to 2011. I think he knows what he's talking about. And that article is entitled, Gruevski must resign and make way for a transition process in Macedonia. That article was dated March 23rd, 2015, so that it is recent, and the alleged corruption being talked about in that article is incredible.
Will be put into the record at this point without objection.
And let me conclude just on the 2 points, Kosovo and Macedonia. It's in my written comments here, but I'd like to make just one concluding comment here on both. Regarding Kosovo, if the EU is serious about integration, there must be a much more aggressive approach taken for the recognition of Kosovo by all EU countries, including Serbia. Regarding Macedonia, Albanians need to be treated as an equal partner in a state that does not have an ethnic majority. No majority. You have Bulgarians, you have Slavs, and you have the Albanians. But in that state, when it was formed, the Constitution in 1992 was formed as a Macedonian state. And that still wrinkles the Albanians today because they are not treated as equal, and that's a big problem. The only other option, Mr. Chairman, is federalization. It was talked about back in the early 90s, but what Albanians would need if they didn't get a constitution that treated them as an equal state-forming group, they want federalization that will allow them administrative, social, and financial control over their own destiny as part of a Macedonian federation of Albanians, ethnic Albanians and Macedonians. The problem we got in Macedonia is so simple, it's black and white. Macedonia is an apartheid state in the middle of Europe. The Albanians do not live with the Slavs. They live separately, but unequally. And this is the problem today. And now you have Mr. Gruevski being exposed by his own opposition Slavic leader as one of the most corrupt leaders in Europe. And the poor Albanian people are sitting there trying to figure out where we fit in all of this.
Joe, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.